we are going to have Corey join us in the live in just a second, but I want to introduce him first before we do that. So Corey Norman, I'm really excited to have this conversation with Corey. He is a Detroit native, I can attest to that, and a CCS graduate. He graduated from CCS in 2015 with his degree in industrial design or product design. And he has been employed for the Chamberlain Group for 5 years now in Illinois. And he's working on their global innovation team. So he's working in the global innovation group as an industrial designer. So we're going to learn from him what it looks like to be an industrial designer and hopefully get your questions answered. So I am going to have Corey. Let's see. I'm beaming you up, Scotty. Beaming you up. It says it's connecting. So he's going to be on shortly. There he is. Welcome, Corey. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. Oh, I haven't seen you in so long. Oh. All right. Well, I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today, as I just said, because I've known you since forever.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see all the things that you've grown up and grown into in your career. So let's get this started for folks who are tuning in. If you have questions about product design, or as we have this conversation, if you have questions, make sure to add them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Instagram screen so I can ask Corey at the end of our intro questions. So I want to start off, Corey, and ask you to share, currently what you're doing in your career, what your day-to-day life looks like as an industrial designer.
Are we talking about while I'm quarantined or? But essentially, my job as an industrial designer is to create products for my company from research all the way to final manufactured product. My day-to-day is typically around kind of doing iterative design over a concept. So if we have research that has been compiled and created stories around them so that we kind of understand who our target is, I kind of use that information to inform how I design the product. So when a business has identifies a need, I then work with my team to help figure out what that looks like from an experience standpoint, in terms of both how it functions as well as what it looks like. And it's just iterative working with the team until we get to the end of that process where it can be manufactured. Got you.
And so with Chamberlain Group, what types of products do you work to design? Is it like any and everything under the sun? Is there a specific group of products?
There's a specific group. A lot of people would know them because they manufacture garage door openers, which seemingly isn't the most glamorous thing in the world, but is very necessary for a lot of different industries. We create operators for fire departments, for military bases, for you see a lot of restaurants that have the big glass garage doors. They typically will purchase our operators for that. Most residents will have our operator installed. We currently have about 85 to 90% of the market share on that specific product. But within my team, we primarily work on new initiatives, new opportunities. So I tend to work more on future-focused products. And 2019, we launched our first camera, which I designed, which was really cool. From research all the way to the final design, the packaging, all of that came from me. So that was probably the highlight. But that's usually what my day-to-day and what my work looks like at the company.
That's really exciting. So just to clarify, there's a camera that exists out there in the world that you design from beginning to end that people can go and buy.
Yes.
That's impressive. Yes. That's really cool. After this, I want to get the information for it. I don't know if I can afford it, but I'm interested.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really cool. Okay, so a big reason why I do these conversations live is because I also want to help high school students or students who are transferring from college understand what the process is like to get to a point like that, right? Get to that point from their younger budding creativity. So let's travel through time, going back into the halls of Renaissance.
Oh, geez.
And I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself as a high school student. What type of art or design were you working on then? What were you really interested in? What did you want to do when you grow up? Give me a highlight of who high school Corey was.
I didn't even know who high school Corey was at the time. Um, I did a little bit of everything. I did 3 or 4 different sports, a bunch of different extracurriculars. Art was one of them. But
Mm-hmm.
quite honestly, although it was one of my passions, I was more so focused on like any and everything that had nothing to do with school. You know, relationships, friendships. I love sports, but I really just like being around the people and less like hyper focused on what it is I wanted to do and where I was going to go with it after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think probably around my junior year is when I finally started getting like serious about it being a potential like career choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if we like kind of looked at the journey of what that looked like for me, I was doing art and design in middle school before high school. Um, I was a part of a program in Detroit through CCS actually as a young guy. Um, Community art partnerships. I was
Oh yeah.
a student of them where I got to paint murals and kind of learn how to draw and do public art. One of my first mentors and uh, still a great guy that I know, his name is Charles Miller, Chaz. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
he had probably the biggest impact on me growing up in terms of what it meant to do art, and then
Mm-hmm.
how did that identify with you as a person. For
Mm-hmm.
him, it was how to use this craft to outreach people and make change,
Mm-hmm.
both visually and to the people he mentored. Um, so for me, that was really, really huge. And as I struggled figuring out what I wanted to do, I leaned back on art. I joined a program at Renaissance called the GM Explore program,
Mm-hmm.
where I again worked with CCS
We're
students.
pervasive.
Yeah. And I learned how to draw cars. And by my
Mm-hmm.
senior year, I thought for sure, I was like, oh, I'm going to work for GM or Chrysler. My dad works for Chrysler. I was like, oh, I'm going to be an automotive designer. Um, and that's pretty much what shaped my entrance into CCS. They kind of
Mm-hmm.
shaped me since middle school, and it went away and then somehow crept back up once I got into high school.
Like we're back.
Yeah.
Well, so tell me about this. You were interested in doing automotive design based on that program. What caused you to switch to working on product design?
um, Automotive, at least when you first start learning it, is very repetitive in a sense of you have to have a certain passion to really find yourself knee deep in it. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I liked the exploration process of design. I loved just going from idea to something and then iterating on that and then moving on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like in automotive, although it was fun, I learned a lot and it was had its challenges. I felt like I was doing a lot of the same thing over and over to like kind of hone that craft.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the kind of versatility of product design.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the interesting thing about this degree is that I could still do automotive if I wanted to.
Yep.
And and I actually got an offer to do automotive before I moved to Illinois with Ford, but I was going to be in the interior department, which would have been something I would have enjoyed more because doing components and stuff, you have versatility. You do a little bit more um, knobs and steering wheels and just a variety of different things. You're not just working on the exterior of the vehicle. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I think that repetitiveness is really what I'm a sporadic person, as you heard from high school. I did a little bit of everything. So I was like, I need to continue doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it sounds like that's what you're doing at Chamberlain, just based on what you
yeah.
described, some of the different products you're working on. So you're,
Yeah.
you're doing what you wanted to do. That's
Yep.
cool.
Absolutely.
So you talked to us about middle school and high school, Corey. You tell us a little bit about how CCS was there. Is that what made you choose CCS? Was accessing some of those programs? Did you apply to any other art schools?
I did. Well, actually, I didn't apply. I looked at them. Um, excuse me. I applied to more schools around sports
Mm-hmm.
than I did for art. They did have art programs, which is why I was interested in them because I still
Mm-hmm.
wanted to major in some type of art or design.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, oh, let me see if I can get a scholarship. I've been playing sports my whole life. that was kind of my mindset, trying to ease the burden on my parents having three kids going to college at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the more and more I kind of sent out applications and stuff, the more and more CCS just made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to just stay home and commute a short distance to go to school made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a lot of people there, had a lot of connections, which made the entire kind of 5 years that I was at CCS easier and made it more
Mm-hmm.
convenient for me. Um, but I think that at the end of the day, the programs that the school had were the biggest highlight.
Mm-hmm.
I know money is always a huge thing top of mind, and there were a lot of opportunities to get scholarships and stuff. I kind of put shame on myself because I didn't put so much energy into art as I should have before applying, because if I'd done the necessary due diligence ahead of time, I would have been able to get more scholarship money. But
Mm-hmm.
I got lazy. I didn't have focus and stuff like that. But CCS was still open. They worked with me, gave me the opportunity to come in, and as I continued to kind of improve and stuff, and continue to talk to the advisors and stuff, they worked with me, and I was able to make it happen. So.
That's awesome. That's good to know too, because I know we talked about this a little bit with our IG Live with NUBC, but there's all different types of students who are interested in art, right? And
Hmm.
some are straight A students, some, struggle. Some have had art their entire life, some
Hmm.
haven't had art class ever. And so it's always helpful to see different perspectives of,
Right.
what guides you to get to art school. And then even once you're there, knowing that there's support if it wasn't something that you'd always had experience with, right?
Right.
Or if you needed some tips and tricks to grow. So that's really
Hmm.
exciting. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Alrighty, so talk about CCS and your major. So I know I read your resume. It's impressive. You did a couple of internships while you were a CCS student. Tell us a
Hmm.
little bit about those.
The first internship I had was with, at the time, it was a startup called Pocket Square Design.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and actually, one of the founders is a CCS grad in the
Oh,
automotive
wow.
department. And it honestly, I just have to say I was lucky. Um, there was three founders of the company. Uh, Two were at GM, one was at Ford, and the designer at Ford went to a CCS industry day, and I had my stuff laid out. I was talking to a different company at the time, and he kind of just stood there waiting. And Steve Shock, I'll never forget it, interrupted my conversation with the other person and said, "Hey, Corey, there's a gentleman here who has been waiting for a little over 10 minutes to have a chat with you. No rush, but I really want you to meet with him. He seems really interested." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I said, "Excuse me, if you don't mind, I'd like to have a conversation with this gentleman." So, "Oh, no problem." Took his business card, shook his hand, turned around and had this conversation. He had me explain my work. He said, "I like what you're doing here." Um, and that was it. No business card, no nothing. He took my information, but he kind of walked around and kept looking. Later that summer, I got no offers, and I was working at the zoo doing photography and things like that. So I was like, okay. And one day after work, I got home and I got a phone call. He was like, "Hey, it's so and so. Do you remember me from Industry Day?" He's like, "Yeah, I used to work at Ford." I was like, "You used to work at Ford?" I was like, "Yeah, started a company with a couple of friends or colleagues, and was wondering if you had any internships already." I was like, "In fact, I don't." He was like, "Well, would you be willing to start one?" I was like, "Absolutely." Um, so right then and there, he gave me the offer over the phone, and I went in there, and it was an automotive based internship, but
Mm-hmm.
it was around the infotainment center in the interior of the vehicle. And one of the things that they were really focused on was innovating around the interior of a vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
the size of the screen, some of the different technology that they were able to use from their client, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So it was really interesting to get in there and learn, do some research, look at the data, help them come up with some designs. Um, and like it really kickstarted me even like pursuing internships. I was like, "Oh man, this was a great experience." I didn't like anything I did while I was there. I thought it was all horrible, but you know, they
A
saw
learning
value.
opportunity, though.
Yeah,
Right?
and they saw value in my thought process, and I thought, um, you know, this internship opened up a perspective that I didn't have before, and that led to me doing more interviews for internships. Um, and another CCS grad came into a separate industry day. Never met him. I wasn't there at the time he showed up, but Kristen Huff sent me an email, said, "Hey, there's a gentleman who would like to interview you. He will be here on this day. Is it possible that you can come and interview him? He's looking for somebody for the summer." And I said, "Well, I currently have a summer internship, so I can't do that. And I have a sponsor studio that I'd like to do the following semester. So I won't be available till winter. Would he still be interested in interviewing me anyways?" "Yes, no problem." He said he wants to talk to you. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Interviewed him. Within 30 minutes, he gave me the opportunity to come out to Chamberlain, where I work now, and intern. And I interned there for 8 months. It was 2 consecutive.
And it was that winter. So it was after you finished the internship and the sponsor studio project. You already had an
Yeah,
internship lined up?
I did. Yep. So that January, I packed up a U-Haul, drove down to Chicagoland, got a little apartment, and I was there for 4 months. And I was talking to him. I was like, "Hey, you know, do you guys have repeat interns?" And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, okay." He was like, "Are you interested?" I said, "Oh, definitely." He was like, "Okay." And we didn't talk about it again. So I was like, maybe I'll have to apply when it comes up. The next day he came back and was like, "Oh, by the way, you're extended for the next internship." Like, you couldn't have a conversation with me before. Somebody
What if
already,
I was making life plans?
well, someone signed the lease on the apartment that I was in, so I had to find a new place to stay.
Oh, wow.
It was actually kind of stressful, but it was still cool. It was really cool. So I ended up being there for 8 months. He's actually my mentor still. He's from Detroit, and he moved back with his wife because they had a child. And every time I go back home, I go and see him. So he's been a huge impact on me, and kind of opened that door to where I work now.
That's amazing. That's crazy. And I know one of the people you mentioned in that story was Kristen Huff. For those watching who don't know, Kristen Huff works in our career development office. So we have an office dedicated to helping students get internships, pair with sponsored studio projects. Corey just named like 3 of them that he did. So those are some of the opportunities that CCS helps with. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've heard people like getting multiple like internships and sponsor studios back to back, but I've not heard of people having them like lined up, 2 semesters in advance. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I was surprised because the amount of sponsored studios that like opened up during that time, and I was like, "Oh, I won't get any of them." And like through like after that first internship, I think like the professors and stuff said, "Oh, he's working. Let's give him an opportunity to be in these sponsored studios." So until I graduated from that point on, I was in a sponsor for my actual projects or studios. It was a sponsored studio until I graduated. It was
Like
it was
every studio?
every studio because I didn't get the internship until my 3rd year.
Gotcha.
So for the last year and a half, because I took the 8 months off to intern at Chamberlain, when I came back, I had my last 2 were sponsored studios. So it was just like, it was wild. I didn't think I would get any of these opportunities, but because I was a super senior, and I got some experience in the field, they were like, "Yeah, let's throw him in. Let's throw Corey in there. Let's throw Corey in there." So I still think it's just me getting lucky for having these opportunities back to back, but I also
I
worked my
mean,
butt
there's
off
luck,
once I
but then
got
there's
in there.
also work. There's also talent.
Oh
You're
yeah,
putting in the work.
yeah,
So it paid off, which
yeah.
is really exciting. I keep saying exciting because I'm just excited to catch up with you in general. But yes, it's impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a few more questions, and I'm going to stop being stingy and let other folks who are joining the live ask questions. For those of you who have joined a little bit later in the conversation, make sure if you have questions about product design, about industrial design, about being a CCS student or graduate for Corey, make sure you add those in the Q&A box because I'm going to open that up and ask him your questions soon, okay? So I just got 2 more questions that I'll ask you, and I'll open the floor up. So what is one thing that you learned or gained from CCS that has really impacted your life, besides your wife? Because for those who don't know, Corey's married to a CCS alum as well. But besides your amazing wife, what's one thing that you gained from CCS that's impacted your life?
Um, my ability to network.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it goes beyond the CCS name because I know one of the selling points that I always mention to people about CCS is the name of the school alone will at least open a door for people to
Mm-hmm.
look at what you can do. But CCS is always the professors, the people. It was such a competitive environment that it forced you to learn how to talk to people, and forced you to learn how to communicate in a way that made you both stand out, but um, didn't have the arrogance that some may have because of their skill set, but also learn to navigate a room. Industry day is one of those things where you're standing in the middle of a room and you just have professionals walking around you. So it's like, how do you introduce yourself and get someone to walk over to you and talk to them about what you can do, what your skill sets are, what your projects are? How do you um, get those business cards? How do you maintain those relationships once they leave? How do you send those follow-up emails and things like that? You know, CCS really put me outside of my comfort zone so that I could get those next level opportunities. So that's probably the biggest impact that's affected me in my current day when talking to the CEO of my company, and I'm sitting there like, that's the CEO. How do I even begin having a conversation with this person who, you know, has had a very great career in her life, but CCS kind of given me the tools to go in there and go, yeah, I know how to talk to you with confidence,
Mm-hmm.
like another person, but also, you know, having that mutual respect. And it's just one of those things that I just take with me everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, last question for me.
Mm.
Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your high school self? You're exiting high school, crossing the stage, and you run into future self.
Mhm.
What would you give your young self as advice?
Um, work hard at out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's because hindsight is 2020. I mean, not knowing what I wanted to do, it was like, oh, this is unnecessary work, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
why would I put in all the extra hours and force myself to do all this extra work when I don't even know if this is the thing I want to do? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but future Corey would tell me that if you put on this work now, no matter what path you go, you are ensuring your success.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that, you know, I think I worked a little bit harder once I got out of high school because I had to play catch up. Um, the good thing was that I had a great foundation, even though I was lazy in high school. I had a great foundation and doubled up, doubled down, um, and put in that extra work. But I think high school Corey would have got uh, that type of advice from me. Stop being lazy. Put your foot
I
into what
mean,
you're doing, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's interesting. All right, so I am going to see what questions you all have for Corey. All from one of your peers. What do you miss about CCS?
my peers. Honestly,
That's what you miss.
that's the biggest thing. I miss my friends, like Indu right there. I don't see that guy no more. I miss him. I miss all the people. I miss the environment. I miss the collaboration. We would stay up together until 3, 4 in the morning. We wouldn't even sleep some days together because half the time we were supposed to be working. Half the time we sat in there singing songs and just having fun. Um, but the community at CCS is fantastic. All different types
Mm-hmm.
of people coming together from different walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And we bond over creativity and we bond over individuality. And it was just one of those things that, you know, as an adult outside of school, you're like, how do you make friends? Like, how do you do that? But at CCS, it was so easy. And these are
Mm-hmm.
people that, you know, I love to this day and still consider, you know, really good friends. But that's probably the biggest thing I miss.
Yeah, that's why I came back. I couldn't stand Corey. He's the best people on earth here.
Yeah,
Like
seriously.
Sabria, who's in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah, I stay around the good people. All right. Oh, another question from NUBC. What is it like being a super designer? Actually, that's a silly question, but I actually have a serious question. So on your resume, you had like product designer 1, product designer 2, product designer 3. What do those levels indicate? What are the differences in levels of product designers?
I think that the easiest way to put that is level of responsibility. When you come in, you tend to have someone looking over your shoulder, making sure that you're doing stuff, you're on top of stuff. By level 3 and moving into senior, they give you an assignment, they walk away. They're like, I let the team know that you'll be the lead on this from a design perspective. Let me know if you have any problems, and they walk away. Luckily, because I had the 8 months prior, my first year, I got thrown in the deep end and he walked away. But those tiers are really just levels of responsibility. Once you can kind of show you can juggle your work, maintain your time management and things like that, I was able to kind of move up the ladder. I'm getting way more involved in things around the company, mentoring co-ops and interns. Since the beginning, I was like, I want to be involved. I want to give back to the program that got me here. So I've been a mentor since I got there. And we've hired designers, we've hired engineers, we've hired people who were college students. We have a huge program. And yeah, it's just level of responsibility, level of involvement with the company, and just kind of, I think, a testament to the work you put in. It's like, let's reward you for your hard work, but also we trust that you can do this hard work. So we want to move you up the scale.
I know I'm not a product designer, but if I have something I need designed, I trust you. You're very level-headed and creative and amazing, talented person. So let's see if there are any other questions. Any other questions about industrial design, product design, what it's like to be a CCS student? I'll give it a few seconds there. If we don't have any other questions, I don't see any more popping up. Corey, I want to thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your honesty, and sharing your journey with us. I know that there are some young high school students, possibly some transfer students, who need to hear what you shared today, and I thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, and can I tell people to follow you? Do I tell people to follow you? I know some people are like,
I know I'm private, but I'll accept all people.
If you want to go see what the life of a product designer looks like, and you want to follow Corey, what's your Instagram? Is at CJ_Norm at CJ_Norm to catch up with Corey. So thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to make sure to save this video, so if you need to come back and rewatch because it's so good, it will be available for the next 24 hours. All right, everybody. Thank you so much and have a great night. Bye, Corey.
See ya.